Hi, my crochet friends. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm very excited to share with you my latest sock design. This is a self-drafted sock. That means that there are no exact measurements because you will make your sock according to your size, your length, and your measurements, and whatever loved ones that you're making your sock for. You may find it helpful besides yarn enough to make socks. It doesn't matter the size of the yarn because these are self-drafted, but enough yarn to make socks and a few stitch markers you may want to have on hand. The size crochet hook that I'm using is a 2.75 millimeter C hook for fingering weight yarn, as well as a pair of scissors or clippers. And if you choose not to slip stitch with the crochet hook, you will need a yarn needle or darning needle. So with that being said, this is a very simple construction. It begins in a panel that is worked from right to left. And that panel will begin with right below your toes into where you want to stop for your cuff. And it is worked in half double crochets to create this knit-like stitch and give it stretch vertically and horizontally as well. And that was the inspiration for this design, to make socks for my children that would guarantee stretch over time and grow with their foot and keep that same comfort. So after the panel is made, for the length that you would like, you're going to work the first panel, the width of the foot on the top of your foot. And at the bottom, you can choose whatever stitch you like to continue in that panel, but there will be increases for the gusset here. We will stop halfway, detach the yarn, and reattach. We're working from right to left on the opposite side and mirror the same side that we just completed, and then slip stitch it together here to bring it all together, which will leave an opening or a gap that we will then cut, reattach the yarn here, and then work in half double crochets around the cuff until we're ready to turn it inside out and slip stitch it to seam, or seam using a yarn needle of your choice. Then we will reattach. I chose a different color yarn for the toes. We will reattach for the closing and do some slight decreases in this area, and then your sock is complete. So let's get started. First, we're going to start by making a chain. You will want to start just slightly beneath the toe. It could be at the first digit of the toe or the bottom, depending on if you're using a separate color, how much of that color you want to be shown. These worn, you only see the contrasting color at the top of the toe. So if you want more of the contrasting color to show, you want to stop at the base of the big toe if you'd like to see more of the contrast, because it will be worked in a decrease and closing in that area. But I didn't want to show that. I just wanted this yarn to show, so we only see the contrasting color at the top of my toe in this way, so you can barely see it. So that is up to you. So we're going to start with the chain. And for my socks, I am a size 8. I chained 103 chains. So I will chain my 103 chains and meet you there. Now that I have my chain, I'm going to start working half double crochets starting from 1, 2, 3, from the third chain from the hook. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to work half double crochet starting from the third chain from the hook until the last chain of this row. and I will meet you there. Okay, when we reach the end of the row, we're going to chain one, turn our work, and here is the knit look that gives the stretch that I was talking about. So after we've completed that first row of half double crochet, we chain, we turn the row. This will be our right side, and on our right side is where we're going to see those knit-like look stitches. Okay. And what we want to do is in this next row, yarn over and place your hook into the not the first or second bar, but the third bar. And if you would like, carry your tail over so that you can weave it in. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to make another half double crochet into this third bar from right to left, so in every single stitch. And what we will do is we're going to work this half double crochet to the end of this row, but when we turn in order to give this continuous knit-like look, we're going to then work in the front bar of the next row. So you will alternate half double crochets in the third bar one row, and then half double crochets in the front bar of the second row. So in this row, I'm going to continue with half double crochets until the row ends, and then meet you for the next row where we work half double crochets in the front bar, and that will create that knit like look, giving us the desired stretch that we want in our socks. And I will meet you there. Okay, so now, although you might not see that knit look happening now, you will in just a minute. So let's chain one and turn our work. And for this alternating row, we're going to yarn over for more double crochets, but this time into the front loop of the stitch. So half double crochet into the front loop, and after a few stitches, you will begin to see, and of course it's double crochet from right to left, from the beginning to the end of the row. You will begin to see the knit look appear on the right side. And you can see it here. So we will be half double crochet, making a half double crochet in the front or the first bar on the wrong side until the end of the row. And when we reach the end of the row, we will chain one and turn, and then half double crochet in the third bar of that row. And after that row is completed, we will go back to the alternating back and forth half double crochet in the first bar, and then the next row in the third, and then in the first, and then in the third, until you've reached the width of across the top of your foot. For me, I believe that was 24 rows, so 24 rows for me for a size 8, but I will see you there. Now that we have the width that we would like for across the top of our foot, and again, we're going to always work from right to left. Now we're going to follow up with the increases for the gusset. So we will work half double crochets until we reach the area for the gusset, which is right around the ankle. It's going to work down below the ankle and widen out there. And we will actually, you can switch to half double crochets, because now we've reached not only the gusset area, but where the sock will fold over and actually be on the sole of the foot. So you can switch over to double crochets if you want to speed it up, work only double crochets in this area, and then switch back to half double crochets for the cuff to keep that consistent, because no one's going to see what's on the bottom unless you show them. Now you could continue in half double crochets one row and then single crochets the next row, or single crochets on the sole of the foot if you like. That's up to you. You can also increase with a half double crochet or 2 single crochets. It really doesn't matter. But for this self-drafted pattern, so that my socks match and they work a little bit quicker, I'm going to do double crochets on the bottom, and my increase will be in double crochets, and I'll show you how I did that. So starting from right to left, I will be, if you haven't already, chain 1, and then you can place your stitch marker where your increase will be. We've marked where that increase will be, and we'll work down to that point. And I decided to make my increase in double crochet and continue to the end of the row from there in double crochet. And then when I work back the row, I will do the same thing on the opposite side. So for the increases, we will, for my size 8 foot, I will have about 6 rows of increases, and then we'll stop there and cut the yarn and reattach to the other side and mirror the the rows that we just completed on this side. But right now we're just going to start working these half double crochets, if I didn't say that already, down to the stitch marker, and that's where we will increase. Okay, so in the next stitch, in the 3rd bar, you have 1, 2, 3 bars. This is where we will make a double crochet. And actually in the V-stitch, if you would like to see the increase on the side, you can chain 1 and then insert another double crochet into the same stitch for the increase. Now you do have the option of making this increase without seeing, and I'll show you what I mean. I think it's cute to see the increase, so you can see the increase stitches here in a V-stitch, but you also have the option of closing that increase gap just by making 2 double crochets, because it's still an increase, just like that. So we'll do that on this sock because it's mine and it don't matter. So then, as I mentioned, we will make double crochets. You can place that stitch marker back there just in case you need it. It's more obvious with the V-stitch. But double crochets now to the end of the row, then we'll chain 1, turn, and double crochets through to the increase, and then stop, and then half double crochets working the cuff, chain 1, half double crochets into the increase. That's where you will begin the double crochets, and you'll continue this for about 6 rows. After 6 rows, we'll cut the yarn and reattach it on the opposite side, as I mentioned before, so that we can mirror the side before we seam it together and then work the cuff, not actually in a round, but in more of an L shape, and or I guess maybe just right to left, and it eventually forms a sort of an L shape before we seam it closed. So that's what I'm going to do now. Continue to double crochets, turn, double crochet back into the increase, and half double crochet. So after I have worked 6 complete rows, I will and mirror the other side because it's the same exact thing. Then I'll meet you there to see how we close up the cuff, how we seam and close the cuff. Let me go back so you can see me do it. So this is where my increase stitch is. There's no chain 1 for the gap, but I've already double crocheted into the stitch, and so where the increase is, I'm going to double crochet under the stitch and then double crochet again in under that same stitch, and then double crochet into the next stitch. And this is where you see the half double crochets show up again. So we are now going to work into the cuff, and so that we keep the same pattern of the knit-like stitch going, we will continue to work into the first bar of the stitch, half double crochets until the end of the row. Like we did before. And that sequence will continue. When we get to the end of the row, we'll chain 1 and then half double crochet into the third bar. Work until the double crochets begin, or whatever stitch you chose where your increase is. Always work into the stitch and then into the increase and continue in that pattern. So I just want to double check with you to make sure you knew exactly what I meant before we complete this side, cut the yarn, and then mirror the other side. So now I'm seriously going to meet you back on the other side after it has been mirrored. I'm going to stitch the other side up after this side. So I am going to complete this side, cut the yarn, reattach, and then work the mirror side so that it matches. And I'm going to meet you when I've completed that and ready to seam it up and then complete the cuff in kind of a, I guess a U shape, not L, but a U shape. I'll meet you there. Okay, so I have completed the mirror side, and now we are going to, you can either slip stitch this closed, or you can whip stitch it, weave it in, and what you'll do is you'll start to, I'm going to weave it in today. I did slip stitch in the other sock, but today I'm going to weave a very long tail from the end to the bottom of the cuff here. And after I've woven this closed, after I've seamed this closed, then I'm going to detach the yarn and reattach on the end. I like to, let's see, wait, sorry. We turn this inside out. So this is right side. So inside out is how we seam it. I didn't want to forget to share that part. And so we'll seam it to the bottom of the cuff, and then we'll turn it back right side out. As you can see, it'll be like this. We'll turn it right side out. And then what we'll do is reattach the yarn, and we'll be working in that U shape that I mentioned before in the half double crochet the entire time. And we will decrease it here at this joint, and that will end up closing the cuff, close the cuff. And then we'll reattach the yarn at the toe, and I did choose a different color, contrasting color, and we'll just make one single crochet row and chain one, and then we'll work turned rows. So chain one and work the opposite direction and decrease every 5th stitch. These are all single crochets. So I'm big into schematics. It helps me. So hopefully that's helpful to you. So that's where we'll start. So I'm going to seam from the toe to the bottom of the heel now. So now we're going to save this little bit, because you may choose to seam your cuff together, but you can't always slip stitch it. So we are going to drop this, leave this here as we turn this inside out. We're not going to cut that. So here you have the sole of your foot complete. We're going to go back and add the toe, but right now we're going to reattach the yarn and work the cuff in like a U shape. So let's go ahead and start with that. So if you haven't chained one already, chain one and turn. We are now working in that 3rd bar. And what we will do is decrease at the joint or at the closure of the sole. I've got to reattach yarn, don't I? And I don't do anything fancy when I reattach yarn. I just make a solid knot and weave it in as I go. But if you want to do, I think it's a Russian join or invisible, whatever, it's up to you. But I don't. Okay, so here is where I start to weave in those little loose ends just by pulling it over my hook. Just like that. They'll all go in together. Okay, so now we have reached the join of the sole. So we want to make sure that this is tight, because we're going to do a bit of weaving this in as well. So, I mean, you could have woven this into it if you want to, but I just didn't. Okay, so now we just, here in this opening, make your half double crochets, and then the next one, right along that double crochet, you should be able to make, and then in the join, also make a half double crochet. So along the structure of these two half double crochets, you should be able to make, what was that? 1, 2, 3, 4 half double crochets. And then the half double crochets pick up again. And of course, you want to half double crochet, but you also want to decrease. So you can half double crochet, but don't pull through, and then begin a half double crochet, but pull through these two to make that decrease in this area. And then you can continue. I'm not gonna work this yarn in anymore, but you could work it all the way up until this end if you like. But I'm gonna actually use this to seam it closed. My other sock, I slip stitched everything, but this one I just want to seam it to see what the difference is. So I'm going to stop including this, give this a nice tight pull, and continue half double crocheting in the third bar until the end of the row. And then we'll work half double crochets, decreasing in this area until you achieve the circumference that you want around your leg before you slip stitch it closed. And for me, that was, let's see, there's my first row. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. It looks like it's just going to take me a total of 5 rows before I slip stitch. Excuse me, I'm going to seam this sock, but here I use slip stitches. I believe I use slip stitches there as well instead of seaming, but the choice is yours. So we'll continue with the half double crochets for this row, and chain 1 and turn, and half double crochets for the next row, always decreasing by joining 2 together here in the joint of the heel. And I think I'll do that. I will meet you back for the seaming of the cuff, and then we'll start on the toe. Okay, so our sole is finished. Our cuff has been worked in that U shape, and now we're going to either seam it closed or slip stitch it closed. So if you decide to slip stitch it closed, you're going to want to turn it inside out like so. And I thought that that's what I wanted to do, was to seam it closed, but I changed my mind. I'm going to slip stitch it closed. So we will pair these together. And how I want to slip stitch this so it will continue with the same type of look is to insert the hook into the front loop. There we go. And on this opposite side, I want to insert the hook into the first stitch all the way across. Let's try it more this way. Can't really see it, sorry guys. There it is. Into that whole stitch. All right. And then pull it through all those loops. So then again, insert hook under the first bar. And then I guess now I would like to do in the third bar here too, and then see how that looks. Yes, that's exactly what I want. So again, insert hook into the first bar, and then in the next stitch in the third bar, and pull through all loops. So more or less slip stitching, but first, before the slip stitch, insert the first bar and third bar on the opposite side and slip stitch through. And that is what we're going to do until we get to the end of the row. Okay, now that we've made it to the end, we're going to cut so that it has a tail and pull it all the way through. And I had intended on using this to slip stitch this through, but I changed my mind. So I'm also going to cut this yarn and weave it in also. But I mean, you could have if you wanted to. You could have used this if you wanted to slip stitch it. So let's weave this in. You could cut it a little closer because it's not going anywhere if you want. But this is the finishing of the cuff. All right, so the final portion is the toe section. And I prefer to work from right to left. So I will insert my contrasting color at the edge of the change in the stitches. So it will be one single crochet at every half double crochet row. and then 1 single crochet through every stitch that you see on the side here of those double crochets. So we'll get started on the finishing of the sock. So I should probably explain it, huh? So you're going to insert the yarn and hook, and then chain 1. We will be working turned rows, and I crochet my tail into my stitches this way. So it's 1 single crochet for each row. Of the half double crochets. Okay, and we're going to slip stitch to end the row, and when we chain 1, we're going to turn. So we're going to work turn rows now. I love this clean finish that it gives. So these turned rows, and now we're going to single crochet into each stitch until the 5th stitch, and then we will decrease in the 5th stitch. So here, 1, we're going to draw up those 2 loops and pull through 2, and we'll continue to do that until we have just a few stitches left, and then we'll seam it close, turn it inside out and seam it close. I lost count. 1, 2, 3, 4, and so this would be the 5th one here. And decrease. So we'll do that and end the round, and then we'll chain 1, turn, and continue decreasing in every 5th stitch. So I will meet you back when there are just a few stitches left, or you could continue decreasing until there are no stitches left. So I'll meet you back. With just a few stitches left, I decided I'll just turn the sock inside out. You could continue until there are no more stitches left, but I kind of like the wedge look, so I'm going to turn it inside out and seam it close so it will have that line that goes across, because I like the way that fits on my feet. So I'm going to cut the yarn here, leaving it a long tail, and pull the yarn through. And then turn it inside out. So that I can seam it closed. And it's up to you to decide the style that you want your seam to have. It really doesn't matter, just depending on how you want the seam to look. But I hope you have enjoyed this tutorial and have found it is easy to follow. as it was for me to make it, because I really enjoyed it. But that's it, you guys. That is it. Now I'm just going to work it back to make sure that the seam is secure. And after I cut the yarn, we will be finished. So here we are. We have 2 socks. And again, I hope that you have enjoyed this tutorial. And if you have any questions, let me know in the comments or send me an email. All my information you can find in the bio. I hope you also give this a thumbs up and share it if you know someone that might be interested. But I will see you guys again in the next video. Thanks for watching.